Morant blows by Primo. Attack!
Jokic in the power. Here it goes. Got it. Denver has won.
But that's my stubborn side. Like, it's easy to go somewhere and go win a championship with somebody else. It's easy. But this is the hard way to do it, and we did it.
We welcome you in to the Small Ball Podcast alongside Christian Dennis and our great producer, Andy. I'm Scott Ayers. The wonderful Trevor Mikulin is here missing another episode once again. He is in Sacramento. Christian, on our last show, you did talk about what it's like to spend a day in Sac. This episode, give us an idea of what the holidays are like in Sacramento.
Oh, well, in California, in Sacramento, you don't get all 4 seasons. So around Christmas time, it's a cool, crisp 50 degrees. Can drop pretty low to let's say low 40s, maybe even high 30s at night. So you're always going to want to have your jacket. Leaves are on the ground. But that's about as cold as it gets. And then, 4th of July is hot. You're looking at around 100 degrees. And it's a good time. So I'm only going to touch on those two. But, yeah, that's basically what it's like.
Christian Dennis's 2 most important holidays, the 4th of July and Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, Thanksgiving's like kind of similar weather to Christmas. So it's like it's a package.
We'll just stick with those two. Andy, welcome. How's it going, man?
Not too bad. I also respect 4th of July and Christmas. I eat glizzies on Christmas too.
That is
Christmas dogs.
This could get off topic really quick, but the idea of glizzies on Christmas, it sounds horrible. Like that's world. That's like jail time worthy.
Is that the most American thing you could do? Is eat a hot dog on Christmas?
Yes.
Right on, brother.
Hell yeah, brother. Just Andy downing a couple dogs right before opening presents that mom and dad have set out for him. That's awesome.
Yeah, you got to leave hot dogs out for Santa too.
Hot dogs out. No, that would make more sense on Santa's figure.
Yeah, I mean, Santa is a bigger dude, so you could tell he eats hot dogs.
He eats glizzies and cookies.
Yeah.
So what?
I give him dinner. You guys give him dessert.
Yeah, it's perfect.
He probably doesn't want cookies every house.
No, it's good to change things up. A glizzy here and a glizzy there. Yeah. So now we know what they eat in Cleveland. But but this is another episode of our tour across the U.S. We are stopping at every small mid-market team, checking them out, giving our overview, preview of what we expect this team will do. In our last episode, we talked about the Washington Wizards, so go ahead and check that out if you haven't already. But today's episode is going to be a fun one.
Yes, it is.
Because we are in the great state of California.
Hello.
And we're stopping in the city that never sleeps on the West Coast.
What?
The city that never sleeps on the West Coast.
Okay.
We're in L.A.
What?
But we're not talking about the L words.
No.
We do not talk about the L words on this show. We are talking about the L.A. Clippers.
Whoa. Clip City.
Clip City, dude. And we will be talking about the Clippers, and this is a team that before the show, we were really excited to talk about because we'll get into it a little bit later on in the episode, but this is one of the best teams, at least on paper, in the NBA.
Yeah, and we want to start off by saying we understand that the Clippers are in Los Angeles, but when you think of Los Angeles sports, you do not think of the Clippers, and that's why we're going to talk about the Clippers. They're the shadow of the L words. They're the little brother. No one necessarily cares. You go to Nebraska and you see a Lakers fan.
Yes.
You don't go to Nebraska and see a Clippers fan. So that's why we're talking about the Clippers. And like you said, on paper, this Clippers team might be the best team they've ever assembled in the history of the organization.
And I don't think that is a crazy thing to say. And like I said, we will really dive into that, especially once we get to the offseason portion and how they got here. But yeah, just to reiterate that too, if you're a Clippers fan, you're like, man, we're in LA. This is a small mid-market podcast. We're talking about the Clippers because we think they deserve the coverage that they might not necessarily get because they have been in the shadow of the Lakers. And I think this is going to be a season where there's a ton of big names on the Lakers, but there's a ton of big names that play for the Clippers that, quite frankly, I think they have a better roster than the Lakers, but we'll get into that. Let's talk about their past season, which was just marred with injuries. Terrence Mann playing the most games for the Clippers last season at 81, but none of those big name stars in Kawhi Leonard or Paul George played more than 40 games. Kawhi sitting all of last season out. Paul George only playing 31 games last season.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like with Kawhi sitting out the whole year, the Clippers kind of took this route of, we're not going to be super competitive in the fact of, we're going to win a championship, but let's collect assets. Let's collect players to make our team better, try to fill any gaps, any holes that we have on our team so that next year when Kawhi is back and our team is healthy, we can make a run at making a championship. And you know what? I feel like for the Clippers, their goal should be championship or bust. I mean, they should be a contender in this league. And I really want to see them succeed because they are a franchise that have just been riddled with unlucky circumstances. There's that Clippers curse sort of thing kind of placed on their team, and I want to see them break it, and I want to see, the Clippers fans finally be able to have something to cheer about, as opposed to seeing, their big brother always win.
Yeah, and it does feel like that curse just is always kind of looming, and I feel like that curse is like the face of Steve Ballmer with his tongue out when he's doing his wacky celebration, which isn't fair because Steve Ballmer, since he's kind of come into this role as an owner, has done everything in his will to really make this a competitive team. He is one of the best owners in the NBA, and I don't think that's a crazy stretch. I really think he has done an amazing job of getting the pieces together for the Clippers. So we look at their season. They deal with these injuries. They still find their way into the play-in. They beat the Spurs. And then, of course, it's that historic celebration we saw from the Minnesota Timberwolves that really became kind of a meme in NBA culture and Twitter for the entire postseason was the Clippers falling short once again to the T-Wolves.
Yeah, and it was a great game, and just the reaction from Minnesota sports fans and just the team Minnesota was absolutely wild and just great for that organization because it kind of, got them on the right ball, the right movement going forward. But for the Clippers, them losing in the play-in, it's like, whatever. There's next year for us because that's basically their goal in mind. They knew that this year they're not going to be able to win without one of their superstars in Kawhi. So it's like, the fact that they were even in a competitive state of being in the play-in is just great. It's just good to remain competitive, kind of get a little bit of a feel of how to play with at least Paul George, and then hopefully adding Kawhi, it's a seamless plug and play sort of thing to where they can really take off from there.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And yeah, just to even be in that spot with all the injuries they dealt with, one also shows what Ty Lue was able to do with that roster and to have the success that they did, because only getting 30 games of Paul George, you'd hear that and no Kawhi Leonard, and to hear that they were really just a couple shots here and there away from really making the playoffs is really a job well done by Ty Lue. My one question too with that play-in game is, do you think, as a Clippers fan, do you kind of have any anger towards guys like Pat Bev and company? I know if you talk to Clippers fans, Patrick Beverley was actually, loved because of, he's just a dog. He is just a dog on the court. He gives you some of the hardest played defense. He gets in other teams' head. does that kind of rub on you the wrong way, watching that celebration, cat crying? Or do you kind of see it as, you know what, let them have their moment where this season's going to be ours?
I mean, I feel like if they're going to have to lose to someone, the fact that they lost to a player that they really loved when he was on the Clippers, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, like I said, like I just don't think the Clippers really thought that they would be able to do anything this year with Kawhi being out. So, you know, if Pat Beverly beats you, then Pat Beverly beats you. Like it's not the end of the world. And I mean, look at what Minnesota did. They literally traded Pat Bev the offseason. So It's like, you know, who cares? You know, it's not like there's going to be this huge rivalry between Minnesota and the LA Clippers. Like, I don't see that being a thing. But yeah, if I'm a Clippers fan, I'm like, hey, you know, good job, Pat. Like, proud of you.
Yeah, I think so too. It's a fun thing to think about. Well, let's move into their offseason. And I would say it was a pretty darn successful offseason. They didn't make any trades. But really, first you look at the guys they lost, and no one really sticks out. Jaden Scrub, Rodney Hood, and Isaiah Hartenstein, which Hartenstein, he's a serviceable at best center. Backup center, but really you're not losing any valuable pieces in this offseason.
Yeah, not really. I mean, Hartenstein was a solid role player for you, but I mean, he wasn't in the rotation enough to where he was carving out minutes for him. I mean, like he would play some games and sit other games. So he wasn't like fully in the rotation. So yeah, that's not really much of a loss for the Clippers.
But let's talk about their signings and the re-signings. They obviously bring back Rocco. Zubats is back, who's coming off probably his best year in his career. Batum comes back, so there's maybe your backup 4 or 5. And then, of course, Yerpy, John Wall. He is freed from Houston, and now he's most likely going to be the starting point guard for the LA Clippers.
Yeah, we need to re-bring that Troop 41 song back where it's, you know, we have John Wall just blaring in the gym. Everyone's flexing. Just like that was when life made sense for me. And I just want to relive that moment again. But I think John Wall is a fantastic signing for the Clippers. I personally think he can still play basketball. The only reason why he didn't play on the Rockets is because the Rockets wanted to suck. And so you can't suck when you have a guy who is, you know, of that talent playing for you. Last time he played for the Rockets, he played probably like 40 games or something. And, you know, he averaged like roughly around like 7 assists, which if he can come into this Clippers team and, you know, he's not necessarily worrying about being a big scoring sort of impact for them, and he's just playmaking, that's going to be awesome for the Clippers because they've just, you know, Reggie Jackson's been awesome, but he just hasn't been that guy that's, you know, an excellent point guard to take them over the edge. And I still think John Wall has some basketball in him to where he can, you know, maybe he's an X factor for the Clippers.
I think so too. I mean, he averaged 20 and 7 in 2020 with Houston, and 40 games played in a shortened season. So I want to be worried because it wasn't like they're paying in a crazy amount because Houston bought him out.
Right.
So this is kind of a big year for John Wall too, to prove that he has still some game left in the tank. And so you pair him with now Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, who are able to get healthy this offseason, with Zubats, who is going to be that starting 5. And now we're starting to look at a starting 5 that, quite frankly, is going to compete for being the best in the NBA.
Right. And, I mean, the fact that Ty Lue is your coach, who's arguably one of the best head coaches in the league, I think is a huge factor in this because we've seen teams in the past that have had such big names, but then they don't do anything. And, you know, having the right coaching staff and kind of the environment, the culture that the Clippers are trying to build, now that it's been established, I think, this has tremendous opportunity for success if everyone is healthy. I hate that the fact that it's like whenever anyone talks about the Clippers, it's like, well, if they're healthy. Like, I just want to see them healthy. I want to see them succeed. And just kind of see the full potential of what this Clippers team could be.
I am right there with you. And if there's any coach who can handle the big names, it's Ty Lue. He's able to do it in Cleveland with LeBron, and now he has that chance with this Clippers lineup. And you're completely right about the health, because last time we really saw Paul George and Kawhi side by side, at least in memory, was the bubble. And that was probably a series that the Clippers want to forget, that blown 3-1 lead in a year that everyone was talking about, the Battle of LA, Clippers and Lakers, two super teams. We didn't get that. NBA fans didn't get that due to Doc Rivers and the Clippers blowing that 3-1 lead. So now we move into this upcoming season. The LA Clippers are once again going to have those question marks of health. But really, as we kind of talked about at the beginning of the show, this is a team, don't be surprised if they finish like third or fourth in the West. That is not going to determine how good this team is, because they're going to rest guys. I'm sure Paul and Kawhi are going to rest their fair share of games. It's going to become playoff time. I do think that the Clippers are top two in the West.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And I feel like the fact that the Clippers really built out their rosters to where if Kawhi and Paul George need to sit, then you're playing Norm Powell, Rocco, Marcus Morris, like Luke Kennard. Like, you have guys who are solid NBA players to fill that role. I mean, they're able to keep you afloat for a little bit. Even guys like Terrence Mann and Amir Coffey performed well. This is just a team where it's like, I feel like they have like 10, 11, maybe even 12 guys that are just like NBA players. Like who they are. It's not like you have like random guys who, maybe was found in the G League or, are rookies or something like that. I mean, they just have guys on their team, which is going to be great for the Clippers because of their past, So I think that's a great thing that they've done from the trade deadline last year to this point now.
And I think that kind of sets them apart from a lot of other teams in the NBA, because they have, I mentioned 10, 11, 12 guys, but especially that starting five. If you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard starting for you, plus John Wall, I mean, that is the idea of that just trio is really scary. It's just going to be, how can John Wall be incorporated into that system? But I would say, just to kind of play on the other side of things, if the Clippers fail to really reach the Western Conference Finals or the NBA Finals, which I know that's a high reach for any team, right? That's the highest team to make it to the NBA Finals. But that's what the Clippers have to do, because that's why Ballmer brought these guys in. We'll start to look at the Clippers as no more than just kind of a failed experiment, because Paul George and Kawhi were brought in to do that, to make the NBA Finals, and they haven't done it yet. The furthest they got, Paul George, just 2 years ago. They fall to the Suns in 6 games. This year really feels like there's going to be some pressure on the Clippers, because unless there's another season-ending injury, expectations feel like a final or bust.
Yeah, and I don't know where the Clippers go from here if they fail, because it's like, this is a great team. I don't know what else you can do, because it's like, do you need to acquire a third superstar? Like, do you really need 3 superstars? I don't think that the way the NBA is now that you necessarily need that big 3. I think having a solid 2 and then just having great role players that buy into like what is expected of them is, what's going to win you a championship. I mean, if you look at the Warriors, like Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, those are like your 2 big guys. And then like everyone else just fits their role. They just buy into whatever role they need to play. And, you look at the Bucks too. That's like Giannis and Chris Middleton. Everyone else buys in. So I don't think you need to go full Miami Heat big three to win this, win the NBA championship now. I think you just need to have a solid team, and this is very solid. So I really hope that they can pull off something.
I do too. I will be if as long as they're not playing Denver, I will cheer on the Clippers just because it's a franchise that I'm sure for Clippers fans and really just any fans of smaller mid-market teams, we're tired of the Lakers, and we would love to see the Clippers actually kind of knock them down a peg or two. But you mentioned the Warriors, and I think that's an interesting point because you even look at Brooklyn and them trying to build like this super team of Kyrie, Harden, and Durant. Didn't last very long. The Sixers did it with Butler and Embiid, Simmons. Didn't last very long. And so it can be a little volatile when you're trying to add all these superstars and all the different personalities to make this basketball team really work itself out. So the Warriors really, too, with Klay Thompson, he had great flashes, but he also had his struggles. Like Steph was the one solidified superstar. Yeah. And the Clippers have two of those guys in Paul George and Kawhi. So it's definitely very doable. It's just going to be tough because the West, as we've talked about in the last few episodes, is just, it's a gauntlet. It is an absolute gauntlet from 1 to 10.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, another thing too is with Kawhi and PG is these guys are superstars on both offense and defense. Like, I feel like if the Clippers are really good this year and these guys are playing to their fullest potential, they should be in an MVP talk. But the fact that they play both sides of the ball, they're going to get judged a lot harder. But these are two guys that could arguably be top 10. And if they just play that the way that they're supposed to be, this team's really sky's the limit. I do kind of think regular season wise, they're going to fall to like third or fourth because I feel like ever since LeBron has like been in the league, been in Cleveland kind of thing, he kind of made it known in a way that's like, we don't need to be number one to win. We could be the third best team in the East. It doesn't really matter where you land in the regular season. It's all about what you can do in playoffs. So that's where I'm like, let them rest. Let them do what they need to do because you don't need to be the number one team to win. And so that's kind of how I view the Clippers, kind of agreeing with you there. Probably lands around third, fourth seed.
Yeah, I agree, and especially when you have guys coming back from injuries, they're going to get their rest, and that's not a bad thing. You should be, as a Clippers fan, if you're going to a game that night, it's like, oh, great, Norm Powell's starting because Kawhi's sitting. Yeah. It's still Norm Powell, though. Like, it's not like it's the end of the world, right? So, but I think that's kind of a good overview. Andy, you got anything for us on the Clippers?
I love Ty Lue.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is also
Nebraska legend.
He's a Husker legend.
Husker legend.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. How's this for a factoid, Clipper fans? Ty Lue, he led the Huskers to an NIT championship.
Whoa.
So
he's a winner.
He's a winner, and he led the Huskers to one of their only 7 appearances to the NCAA tournament, where they were upset in the first round. But he's still a winner. He's still a winner. He's a winner. And he has a championship with the Lakers where he got stepped over AI.
And a championship with the Cavs.
And the championship as a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going
he's just wins at every level except for Division I NCAA level. He did not win.
But if it's at the NIT level, he's a champion. Though, yes. He's a champion. All right, perfect. That's Ty Lue talk. Yeah. Right. And that's today's episode over the LA Clippers, which really was kind of a wacky start, but I'm glad we were able to talk hot dogs. We were able to talk about holidays in Sacramento, and what Santa likes to eat. But for our great producer, Andy, and the always wonderful Christian Venice, I'm Scott Ayers. We say so long for now, and we will see you next week.
Clip City, Chip City.
Hey, Thanks for watching. Before you leave, make sure you like and subscribe. We're the only NBA show that focuses only on covering small to mid-market teams. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Small Ball Podcast. Have a great day.